Now joining me on the Peerless Boilers Hotline, Peerless builds America's best boilers, one of the best executives in the history of the NHL, the senior vice president for the Detroit Red Wings, and in addition, also the senior vice president for the Detroit Tigers, who just racked up another victory today during their home opener as the Tigers off to a 4-0 start. That is the Hall of Famer Jimmy Devellano. Jim, Zach Gelb here, DARPATV.com in New York. Thank you for joining me, and how are you doing?
Good to be with you, Zach. Thank you.
Well, thank you for coming on. A lot of high expectations for your Tigers club this year. Verlander, the reigning MVP, he had a good opening day. You have a lot of bats with Cabrera and Prince Fielder. High expectations for those Tigers this year.
Well, no doubt about that. A year ago we were able to win the Central Division, and we were able to get by the New York Yankees in the first round, and then got beaten out for the American League pennant by the Texas Rangers. But, we've added Prince Fielder to the lineup. We think we have a pretty good pitching staff with Verlander, Fister, Scherzer, Porcello. And I think if our team is healthy, we've got a good chance to certainly repeat winning the Central Division.
Well, I picked you guys to go all the way this year and win the World Series last week on our preview show. And you've seen many great players through the course of your NHL and MLB career. Mike Bossy with the New York Islanders, Steve Yzerman with the Detroit Red Wings. When you look at Justin Verlander, do you see any of those guys that I just mentioned in Justin Verlander? What kind of class do you put Verlander in?
Oh, boy, same class. You're right about that, Zach. Yeah, Verlander's up there with the Yzermans and the Bossies and the Dennis Potvins and Sidney Crosby's, those type of great players. Yeah, Verlander is right there, and, every fourth or fifth game, he starts, you've got a pretty good chance of winning, So, yeah, he's a young superstar stud pitcher, and we're really, really lucky to have him.
Well, let me ask you this, and this never has to be the case because their playoffs are completely different months, but let's say the MLB playoffs were coming up this week. The NHL playoffs, they do start this week. Let's say Game 7 World Series, it's the same night. Stanley Cup playoffs the same night. Is Jim Devellano attending the Detroit Tigers or the Detroit Red Wings?
Well, it would be the Detroit Red Wings, Zach. Even though I'm the senior VP of the Tigers, really I'm a hockey man. I really got over to the Tigers more on the business side because we have the same owner that owns both the hockey club and the baseball team, and that's kind of how it happened. The real brains behind the baseball operation is our president and general manager, Dave Dombrowski. He runs the team day to day along with Jim Leland, the field manager. I'm more on the ownership side, the business side of the franchise. But when it's hockey, I am a hockey man. So if we're caught with the two big games on the same night, I would be with the Detroit Red Wings.
We're talking to Jim Devellano. As he just said, he's the senior vice president of both the Red Wings and the Detroit Tigers. Your 45th year in the NHL. Does this ever get old this time of the month for the playoffs?
Well, no, it's always a very anxious time. Zach, it's an anxious time. That never gets old. You're always kind of nervous going in. This year it's a little bit different. Normally we go in as a fairly strong favorite, but this year, of course, we don't have home ice against Nashville. Nashville, of course, have a real good hockey club, and they have the home ice advantage. So we've got our work cut out for us, and I'm expecting a long, hard series.
It's really remarkable. I was watching the schedule revealing on Saturday morning when they said which team's playing where and what times, and they're talking about the Detroit Red Wings. And when I think about the Red Wings the last 10 years, I think of complete and utter hockey dominance, Stanley Cup champions, and they're talking Red Wings for a 102-point team. The NHL competition this year, it's really up there.
Well, no question. in the Western Conference, we had 6 teams that got over 100 points. Even the 6th-place team, Chicago, got 100 or 101 points. We got 102, and Nashville got 104. And 102 points didn't even get us home ice advantage. It's a tough league. The West is particularly tough. And, some real good teams are going to go out in the first round. I mean, it's just the way it is. It's the way the structure is. And all you can hope is that you're not one of the ones that go out in the first round. But some real good teams. Even in the East, there'll be some real good clubs that will go out early. When you look at a matchup of the 4th and 5th place team, really, there's not much difference between the teams, if any, other than maybe home ice.
I saw the 3rd seed in the West. They have 97 points. Do you have any problem with division winners getting that home game where you look at your team, they have more points, and they're sitting at 102 points, and they have to go out on the road?
Yeah, it's funny you should say that. When the format was devised, I really felt that if you win your division, you should get a little something for it. And even though now I look at it and I feel we're at a little disadvantage because of it, I still think it's kind of the right thing to do, Zach. As long as we have divisions or division format, I think there should be a little something for the team that finishes first, even though the division might be a little weaker. So, I don't like it in terms of the Red Wings as I look at it now, but when they decided to do it, I was all for it. So we'll just have to accept it.
Your goaler, Jimmy Howard's had another impressive season. You look at Howard's career in the playoffs, the 2 years he's made it, he's been 12-11, just a game over 500. His first year, he was 5-7, and his second year in the playoffs, he was 7-4. Any concerns for your goaltender with a little bit of his inconsistencies in the playoffs heading into the big game coming up Wednesday?
Well, no, I don't think so. He had some injuries towards the latter third of the season, but he came back and he played the last 5 games of the season, and most of them were low scoring, and he was really on his game, Jimmy Howard, towards the end. So, we certainly hope that that's a carryover. He was very good for us last year in the playoffs, and so we're hopeful for a carryover of that.
We're talking to Jim Devellano, the senior vice president for the Detroit Red Wings, was out here on the island for many years with the New York Islanders, winning Stanley Cups during that dynasty period. Zach Gelb here, DARPATV.com. And Jimmy, you look at this team, the Detroit Red Wings. You've won 7 Stanley Cups. Do you have a feel when a team is going to win that cup? When you know you have a good team, when do you get that feel that this is a team that's going to really make a run?
Yeah, you sort of do, and sometimes you're right and sometimes you're wrong, Zach. I remember back in 1995, we won the President's Trophy. It was a shortened season because of a lockout, but we won the President's Trophy, and we met the New Jersey Devils in the Stanley Cup final, and we'd gotten through the first 3 rounds of the playoffs, 12 wins, 2 losses. We were a well-rested team. We had home ice advantage, and I really, really thought we would win the Cup this year, or that year in '95. And I think history shows that the Devils swept us. It was devastating to us. And then we didn't win it finally until 1997. But, generally you kind of know, I think you start to get excited when you get into the 3rd round, okay? I mean, it's such a long grind with 4 rounds. You really don't think much about the Cup, I would say, until you get into the 3rd round, and if you start to make some noise in the 3rd round, you figure, gee, we may have a chance. So that's kind of how it is.
Let's go into the East. The last week of the season, we saw Philly play Pittsburgh, and the coaches didn't love each other too much, yelling back and forth with each other. Sidney Crosby, not some kind words in the media this week about him. You got to be excited for this Pittsburgh-Philly one. There's no love between these 2 teams.
Yeah, well, they're both good hockey clubs, and there again, Correct me if I'm wrong, Zach. I think that's a fourth, fifth seed a game.
Yes,
I
that's
think.
right.
Yeah, similar to us in Nashville, there's not much difference between the teams. It could come down to something as simple as the fourth place team having home ice, and that might just be enough to get them through. But you got to look at Pittsburgh. If Crosby and Malkin are healthy and they get the goaltending from Fleury, they really do have a talented team, and they have to be a favorite. I think a possible favorite to win the cup. You have to like Pittsburgh's roster, especially if they're healthy.
Tortorella got fined $20,000 for his comments about Crosby and Malkin. You saw Mike Milbury, the NBC analyst. He called Crosby a punk and a thug on WIP. Do you think this criticism for Sidney Crosby is fair?
Well, it seems a little harsh, a little strong to me. It does. I mean, I'm not sure the league has a better player than Sidney Crosby when he's healthy. He's very, very important to the league, and needless to say, he's ultra important to Pittsburgh. I've never found him that way. Of course, we don't meet them a whole lot in the regular season, being in different conferences, but boy, when he's right, he's a great player and a great star, and I think when he speaks, he does handle the media pretty well, and is pretty well spoken, good-looking young kid. So I think it's a little harsh, personally.
When he was out for a lot of the season this year due to his concussion, you mentioned you're out west in Detroit. When you're looking at that things and when that thing's happening, what's the feel around the league when a player like Sidney Crosby, one of the best players in the league, isn't on the ice?
Well, it's sad, really, because in all sports, whether it's Major League Baseball, Zach, or the NHL or the NBA, let's face it. The stars are the people. Are the people they want to watch the stars. My goodness, even I'm a hockey guy, and I like to watch the superstars. I go back to our days with the Islanders. It was wonderful, to have players like Brian Trottier and Mike Bossy and Dennis Potvin, and then, later with the Red Wings, Steve Yzerman and Nicholas Lidstrom and Brendan Shanahan and Brett Hull and Dominic Hasek. I mean, they're guys that can really take hold and drive the bus, and they're exciting to watch. So, naturally we all worry about our own teams, and certainly we would prefer to play Pittsburgh without Crosby if we had to play them. But that's, that's just because we're competitive and we want to look after our own team. But truth of the matter is you want those stars in the league, you want them playing, and it's people like Crosby that make the NHL so great.
Zach Gelb here on DARPATV.com. Joining us on the Peerless Boilers hotline. Peerless builds America's best boilers is Jim Devellano. And Jim, these New York Rangers, you've been a one seed before in the playoffs. How much pressure's on the one seed going into the big tournament?
Yeah, there's a lot. There really is. You're really expected to win. And I've been with teams in Detroit that did get upset by the 8th seed. It's happened to me more than once, I'm sorry to say. And it's you're expected to win. You got the home ice advantage. Media, the fans, all figure you're a heck of a lot better than the 8th seed. But, I've seen Ottawa Senators play live several times this year. And I think their team is very underrated. They really, really, really have some excellent players at the top of their roster, and some of those players we don't know a whole lot about because they're fairly new. But Carlson, for one, is just going to be a superstar in defense. So the Rangers could have their hands full. They're a good hockey club, Ottawa.
How much does it play into effect? Because, I look at the Rangers. I watch them every day. I'm a big Rangers fan. They played Ottawa this year, and they're 1-3 up against Ottawa this year.
Is that right?
Do the players know that? You think those players know that this could be a big-time upset being that one seed?
Well, I didn't realize that was the record. That's very, very interesting, and it kind of dovetails what I said, that, you know, Ottawa are a pretty good hockey club, and you know, and obviously they've had the Rangers number, which I didn't know. You know, I think you can kind of throw it out in the playoffs. I think if it does anything, it might give Ottawa some confidence, but it also makes the Rangers probably more prepared mentally. They know what they're in for. They know the team. They know they didn't do well against that team. So I would suspect the Rangers, you know, will be prepared. They know they're in for a good battle.
Jim, let's say you were the GM of the Rangers, the kid Kreider who just won the Frozen Four with the Boston College Eagles team. They're talking to him right now in contract talks. If you were the GM, would you put him on the NHL roster to open up the playoffs if you could get a deal done?
Well, you know, it's a little hard for me to say. Zach, to be truthful, I don't know the player. You know, it's hard to bring a boy out of college. You're the number one seed, and to put him into the lineup, who do you take out? It's not that easy. Of course, the reason that they do it, it's really the agents wanting to burn a year of the contract for a kid playing a game or two. They all do it, and you know, I suspect that the Rangers would like to avoid it if they can. That would be my guess.
Final one here as we're talking to the Hall of Famer, Jim Devellano. You bounced back and forth. You were with the Islanders when they won 3 Stanley Cups. You left right before that final one that the Islanders won, and then you went out to Detroit. You look at Peter DeBoer, the head coach for the New Jersey Devils, who's been on this show before. He was coaching the Florida Panthers last year. If you could sit in a room with DeBoer, what advice would you give him about playing your former club?
Well, you know, Peter DeBoer is a good coach. He was a good coach in Florida. He really was a good coach in Florida. I know Peter through the junior hockey. You know, he coached the Plymouth Whalers in our city and kind of got to know him a little bit. And then, you know, he went and did such a good job in Kitchener. But, you know, I really think Peter did a good job in Florida. Their teams were competitive. I know they didn't make the playoffs, but they always had a fairly good number of points. They always came close. It was a lack of scoring and no power play that did them in. And, you know, Dale Talon, you know, went out and signed some players, and I think if Peter DeBoer had the Florida Panthers this year, they'd have been in the playoffs. But good for Peter. I mean, he went to New Jersey. He proved that he is a good coach, and you know, it wouldn't surprise me, even though the Devils don't have home ice, it wouldn't surprise me that the Devils don't win that series.
Especially with number 30 in net, you always have to account for Martin Brodeur. Yes,
well, that's going to be a key thing. But you know, Peter's going to, you know, he got let out by Florida, and you know, he's going to want to show the Panthers that, yeah, I am a good coach, and hey, if we'd had a few more players down there when I was there, we would have made it.
Jim, thanks so much. You know what, let's just bypass the whole NHL playoffs. Would you sign for it right now? Rangers, Detroit, Stanley Cup Finals?
Boy, would I ever. Boy, that sounds great to me. Wouldn't that be a marquee matchup?
Yeah, it would really be great. You know, living out here on Long Island, the fans would be going crazy for the Rangers, and knowing the greatness of the Detroit hockey team that you built up over the last decade, or even more of a decade, everyone would just be thriving. It would be great for the sport.
Well, it sure would be, and that would be a big thrill. So we'll keep our fingers crossed from our end, Zach. Thank you.
Jim, thanks so much. I appreciate the time. Be well.
Okay, let's do it again. Thank you.